Harrow the Blighted Plane by Underground Oracle, a standalone setting book for the Cypher system by Monty Cook Games. This book, well, it's one I've been excited about for a while. I've had sneak peeks of it already, as well as early access for when it launched. Plus, full disclosure, I made the character and ship sheets, however, I had no part in the creation of the actual book aside from lending a little feedback now and again. In fact, for the review of this will be my first time actually sitting down and reading the book as a whole, and not just cherry picking little parts whenever I needed to focus on it. In the past, I've given scores for different products for each section and then tallied them up at the end for a final score, but honestly, each tabletop role-playing game project is so unique and special, it's hard to make a standard benchmark for them in a way that seems to be fair. So I'm not going to bother giving this a score. I'm not really doing that anymore. I'm just going to review it as I see it and then give my conclusion at the end. Presentation. As always, for those of you that know me, you know that I do layout and design in the industry, as well as some editing work. So layout and design of a book is one of the things that really stands out to me. But it's not just important to me, people really do base a book on its cover. Presentation of an RPG is that first hook to get someone interested into something, and without it, many people won't pick the book up to actually see what the content is. So let's start with the presentation. Right off the bat, the art on the cover is great. It's got detail where it needs to be, but still has some white space so it's not overwhelming you. It's a scene of interesting action that makes you excited at the possibilities of the game. And elements of the art help to instantly tell you a little bit about the theme of the setting before a single word is being said. My only criticism here is that the title logo is a little bit busy for its texture without appropriate contrast values with parts of the background. As a result, the title doesn't pop as much as it should. It's still readable, but it doesn't draw the eye. If this book was on a shelf with a bunch of other tabletop role-playing games, although the art here is interesting, the title logo itself wouldn't draw your attention as much as something like these examples, with a much higher contrast value. The book itself follows the normal Cypher system design of two primary columns of text with a thinner third column for side notes and page references. Something a lot of people in the community really like. The font is an easy to read choice with good spacing between the lines. I'm not sure why they have both a wide paragraph space and a paragraph indentation. I feel like only one or the other needs to be there, and the modern choice is to remove the indentation and just have the extra spacing between paragraphs, since that's easier to read as it compartmentalizes the paragraphs from each other. The indentation's kind of a holdover, it's not really needed anymore. I am glad to see a left-aligned text rather than a justified text. I've been seeing so many RPG projects lately with justified text, and although that gives nice pretty columns, the variable word spacing and sometimes variable kerning can make it harder for some people to read. By sticking with left aligned, Underground Oracle is making sure it is as easy to read as possible, something I personally appreciate. Another thing that I applaud them for is the font size. Considering they have a decent word count, going to a 10-point font did probably mean it cost them some page count, but it makes it much more comfortable for me to read. Too many RPGs out there right now use 9 or even 8-point font as their base font size to cram in as much as they can, but then it feels so dense and tiny that my 40-year-old eyes want to vomit and cry at the same time. So thank you, Underground Oracle, for realizing not all of us want font sizes for ants. Okay, alright. I know, you're watching this and you're like, probably yelling, "Stop talking about font choices, you fucking nerd. Next thing you're gonna say is you got a favorite font." And I do, it's Benguat. But the readability of a book is, well, kind of a big deal. Don't worry, I'm almost done with the font nerd stuff. The title and header fonts are good choices as well. The title font has a similar grungy feeling of the logo to tie it in, and the header fonts use a different, easy to read sans serif that has a little bit of a whimsical bit to instill a bit of the fantasy back in. A wise choice, otherwise too much grungy text and it would start to give off nothing but a post-apocalyptic vibe, and it would miss out on the fantasy stuff. The color yellow that's not quite gold but is more of a slightly oxygenated mustard is a choice. Objectively, it works with the other colors. It's not a color I personally would have used, but that is a personal preference thing. And it still complements the rest, and it's not a color you see used often, so it does give a unique identity that stands out. There are some really minor things in the layout that I'd personally nitpick just because of what I do in the industry. A few areas where I feel some mild spacing issues or where tweaking could have improved word flow. There are also many instances of orphans and widows. None of this means anything to any of you because you don't do layout and design and you have no idea what I'm talking about. In fact, 99% of you will never even notice these things, so I'm not gonna spend any more time on them. But just realize there could have been more polish on a few of the details from my point of view. In the end though, the presentation of both layout and design of the project is still above average for me, well above average. It's clear a lot of work and care has gone into the book for this facet of it, and it nails the most important aspects of the presentation for a role-playing game. It's easy to read, so thank you for all those amazing details by the designer that allowed us to actually read the book comfortably. Content. Now let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of the book, the content. Harrow the Blighted Plain uses the cipher system as its foundation. But for anyone familiar with the cipher system, you know that it's more like a toolkit of building blocks rather than one single packaged TTRPG system, which is perfect for building your own books like Underground Oracle has done here. You don't have to spend years designing and playtesting the balance of the core of the system. Instead, you can just tweak and modify the toolkit to suit your needs. It's why, for the majority of designers out there, I actually suggest taking an existing system engine like Fate, Cypher, Year Zero, Powered by the Apocalypse, Cortex Prime, Tricube Tales, and many, many more, and then just customize it to your needs. Cypher is obviously one of my go-to system engines because it has a couple of key mechanics that I think are the best in the industry, and its modularity and adaptability make it extremely easy to design for. Couple that with one of the most cohesive RPG communities I've ever witnessed, and even an unknown indie developer is likely to get some traction in sales. Needless to say, by using an existing engine, Underground Oracle has saved themselves some headaches and was able to focus on the important parts of their book and setting. Getting into the book, they have done the same thing I'm going to do with Voidhome, where they give a brief foundation of the rules and how it works, just enough so you have a baseline to understand how things work, and then they jump into character creation, which is one of the most referenced part of an RPG core book anyways. Because once you know the rules and have that down pat, you don't really need to reference those too much, at least not for this style of game. But the actual character options are things you may often flip back to. So the content itself is definitely organized in what I personally think is a good way. I know there's a big discussion about this, but I think a lot of designers have followed in a similar order of content these days just because it makes a lot of sense for how we actually use the books. Those familiar with the cipher system will adapt to Harrow very easily since there are no dramatic overhauls of any of the core existing engine parts, just minor tweaks and then some nice additions on top of that. There are a lot of great default options in the Harrow book. Then, plus its compatibility with the character options from other Cypher products, this means theoretically you could have hundreds of character options if you wanted to. Thus, your group could narrow focus on just the options keyed to this setting, or open it up and let your players really branch out to tell their own story within the Blighted Plain. And that brings us to the setting itself. I'm not going to go into too many details for it because, well, I think that's something you should pick the book up for. But it is very interesting. It's a fantasy, but also sort of a post-apocalyptic. It revolves around the vast sailable wastes and deserts of these really kick-ass sand ships and with their own mechanics for the ships and everything as well. If I had to correlate it to something familiar, what if you took the Dark Sun campaign setting from Dungeons & Dragons, but made it more vibrant and fantastical with a bit of a punk edge instead of a dark grit? Even the sand ships here kind of remind me of the silt skimmers from Dark Sun. But the lighter and more fantastical feeling to Harrow really draws me in at this point. It's a world of surviving in a harsh environment, but also of grand heroism and epic tales. Also, although you could play a game without the sand ships and still have grand adventures, I personally love giving a vessel or ship of some kind to my players in my games. It lets them travel and explore, just like your average RPG, but they still have a familiar base of operations and maybe even a place for reoccurring NPCs. By making the sand ships such a big deal in this game, you automatically grant those benefits to many of the groups that would play Harrow. And the setting is very well thought out. Whether it's talking about the energy of the crystal blight that's deeply affected the people and world as a whole, or talking about specific regions like the water sands, the great oasis, or the lucent wastes. The 300 pages of this core book start you with enough of a deep world that you could run games for years and never run out of materials. But they left you and themselves enough room to expand upon it and add more to the world as time goes on. After all, the wastes and deserts of the world are vast. Who knows where your sandship could take you? Conclusion: any issues I have with Harrow the Blighted Plain are small and practically insignificant. Honestly, it's a stretch for me to even really find much about this book that I would say anything bad about. There are sections I feel were maybe a bit on the wordy side. I feel like another pass to trim off a few things could have helped cut the page count a little and streamline the information, but considering I'm also a wordy sumbitch that makes my editors cry when they literally need to slash my paragraphs in half, well, Harrow isn't really even that bad in that department. Frankly, it's a solid book. As a standalone product or as a companion book for other Cypher System content, Harrow the Blighted Plain is a good read, a solid game, and worth picking up. It's over 300 pages of awesome. At $25 for the PDF or like $60 for like the hardcover, those prices for an indie dev aren't that bad either. It's not cheap to be an indie dev, I can tell you from experience. And considering the prices to print books these days, yeah, that's actually not bad. So, Harrow the Blighted Plain, it's worth picking up. The links are in the description below, and instead of doing the normal YouTuber thing and be like, hey, check out my junk, go check out Underground Oracle's junk instead. They've got more than just Harrow going on. They make products in multiple systems and even have a really cool solo RPG book that's worth checking out. So hit up the link to their website below and maybe check out their junk instead of mine for now. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, and have a good one, eh?